Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, on our show, we discuss so many of the issues facing boomers, their parents, and what we know, of course, is an aging population, which I am part of. So I want to welcome everybody and remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a professional senior placement and elder care management organization that has a national network of advisors to help in determining the right path for senior living and receiving proper care. So whether it's in-home care, assisted living, residential, or memory care, get the necessary advice from a senior care advisor in your area by calling Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to the website at www.seniorcareauthority.com. And I hope for those of you that have checked out my recent book, actually called The Aging Boomers, you can do so. You just go to Amazon. It's in Kindle version right now, and I'll let you know in the next month or two. It's coming out in paperbacks, and we've gotten some great reviews on it, so I want to thank you all for that, for your support there, and thank you again for support of the podcast. Many of you are going on to iTunes, iHeartRadio, and I would say that the majority are downloading our free app on your iPhone or Android phone, and you can keep up to date with all of our interviews that way. So we got an important subject matter we're going to talk about today, and it's with Peggy Martin. Peggy has been in the financial services industry since 1977. She is with Family Wealth Consultants, a registered investment advisory firm, as a wealth manager, and with legacy planning across generations. Peggy currently holds the role also of CFO for the Morgan Hill branch of the American Association of University Women. So, Peggy, thank you so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. So, you know, there's so many different terms out there. We'll talk about it in a minute, but tell us more about what Family Wealth Consultants does, and maybe give us a little history.
Well, we've been in business for approximately 35 years, and our team assists our clients and their families to manage the unique challenges of wealth, so they're able to enjoy their lives fully and leave a lasting legacy. It is really a unique proposition to be able to work with clients on a legacy level in addition to helping them manage their wealth. It's very rewarding to see life dreams come into reality and also be able to pass values from one generation to the next. So I think that's what makes us special, and what, for me as a professional, makes my career very rewarding.
Yeah, so I you know, through the years, I guess, you know, years ago, you know, there's a lot of new terms out today. You know, you talk, you know, the name of your company, and you know, you're called wealth consultants, and then there's financial planners, and you know, there's just different terms out there. I mean, I remember it was just you're an insurance salesperson or you're a stockbroker or whatever the case may be. So what is a wealth consultant? I guess, are you doing all of the above, what I just mentioned, or certain portions of it? What tell us more about that.
Well, a wealth manager, by my definition of it, is a comprehensive financial well-being. In other words, we look at everything in our client's life, from how is their portfolio allocated, to do they have the right types of insurance, have they visited recently with their estate planning attorney, do they have a CPA, and we are a facilitator to be sure all of the financial components are taken care of in our clients' lives. But also we add the legacy component, which is what I call the soft side, where we find out what's really been important to them in their family, and what do they want to transfer from one generation to the other, and do they want their great-grandchildren to know who they are.
Yeah, that's great. So most of the clients that you are working with, are they more people that have just waited too long to do this and they're already into their 70s and maybe 80s, or are they younger, younger people that are planning properly the way it should be done?
Well, our average age of our client base is about age 65.
Okay.
And a great many of them have already done some planning before they come to see us. And we work with their existing plans typically. And, over time things change, tax laws change. So we want to be sure that everything that they have previously planned for is still doing what they intended it to do. Because things do change. People die, divorces take place, family relationships change, and what's important to them? Is it still the same as it was when they did that initial estate planning documentation, and should we be updating that?
Yeah, so I did take a look at your website, and I if it's okay, I have a couple questions for you on just some terms that I read that I'd like to get some further explanation on, or kind of what you mean. But wealth transfer, tell me what wealth transfer is.
Wealth transfer is a process that when, just say it's the traditional family of mom and dad, and the second parent dies. Wealth transfer typically takes place at the second death, and that goes to the next generation, which is usually the children. Some more sophisticated plans may actually have it go to grandchildren as well, but it typically goes to children, so you're transferring the wealth from one generation to the next generation. And possibly mom and dad have worked really hard to create that wealth, so we want to make sure that the planning documents, the distribution documents prepared by the estate planning attorneys accomplish the parents' goals, but also the children or other heirs need to understand what's been important to mom and dad. How did their wealth get created? So that's part of the wealth transfer process. The root of the word wealth is well-being. It does not always encompass just the money. It's the values, it's the beliefs, it's the faith.
So how does that differ than setting up a will or trust, or that's the mechanism you use for wealth transfer?
Well, actually, everyone who has a net worth needs to be working with an estate planning attorney, because I am not an attorney. I do not write legal documents. So absolutely, I'm an advocate of folks getting that kind of planning work done. The legacy work is a step above that. When I say a step above that, it's not a legal document in any way. It's a value statement. It's what has been important to you. And, there's nothing more devastating to a child to find out that maybe they've been left out of the estate planning process. And I have personally experienced that with a client of ours where one child was actually left out. And that's devastating if the parent hasn't talked to the child about that. Because once the parent has died, the child can't recover what issue it was that the parent had with them. So these legacy documents, I think, are absolutely critical from the standpoint of telling your children or other heirs what's been important to you.
So, I think that, planning for death, which we're all going to face, at least last time I checked.
Last time I checked, that's true also.
Yeah, so it's important to plan, and, probably more and more people are doing that, and many have to plan better. So you're planning for death, but how often do you get involved in planning for life? And that's kind of the area that, we talk about a lot on this show is long-term care, and
right, exactly.
I know that I'm sure you give advice on long-term care insurance and other ways to plan, because really, yeah, there's 100% chance that we're going to die. There's still a pretty, not 100%, but pretty high percentage that you're going to need some sort of long-term care in the future, all right? As long as you live to, let's say, 70, 75, you're going to need some sort of long-term care. So what advice can you give there, and what advice do you provide to your clients in that area?
Well, yes, I do work a lot with long-term care because, for several reasons, I have had the experience with 5 parents, either biological parents or step-parents or in-laws, of working with them in their own long-term care needs. And about 5 years ago, we had 5 parents over the age of 85. Today, we have 1 parent, which happens to be my father, who will be 95 tomorrow.
That's
great. And so we're going to have a celebration for him.
That's great.
And it is a living celebration, so I'm delighted to be able to do that. And your question is well put, because that generation really didn't plan for long-term care. So you're at a loss, you have no long-term care insurance, although long-term care insurance is not for everybody. It's very specific to that situation. Can you afford the premium? Can you qualify for it? It's not easy necessarily to qualify for long-term care insurance. So if we can't use that avenue, I strongly work with my client base to help them create a network around them. And that's why the work that your organization is doing is so critical for resources when folks maybe don't have the money and they absolutely cannot qualify for the insurance, and maybe their children are remote from them. And how do they best manage their own long-term care, and how does the child work with that remotely? Mm-hmm. So it's a big, big topic. I review with my clients quarterly, and we absolutely go over this situation. And I encourage conversations to take place before the fall, before the diagnosis of dementia, before the trigger happens.
So you've been in business for, let's see here, almost 4 decades now, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
almost
longer
4
than I care to admit to.
So have you seen a change recently of people thinking about planning better for the possibility of long-term care than they used to?
It's still, my experience is still that folks procrastinate on it. We have a great difficulty in our society talking about death, number one, but we also have a great difficulty in talking about our own inability to be able to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And it's a topic that's almost like taboo. And when I bring it up, like to my clients that are age 60 or 65 and have parents in their 90s, and it's like, have you talked with your elder parents about what they want to have happen for end-of-life care? Do they have the pulse form? Do they understand that they don't have to have CPR, that they don't have to have the feeding tube, all these things? Do they understand that? And it's amazing to me how many people have a stumbling block on having that conversation. It's like I've had people say to me, well, if I do that, this event will happen. Right. Rather than using it as a positive tool, it's a fearful tool. And I'm not quite sure how to overcome that, other than I continue to have the conversation.
Well, I think some of the statistics are pretty are coming to fruition on the percentage of people that are going to need some sort of long-term care, and obviously there's some horror stories out there, because the challenge is really, as I've seen it, is more with it's harder on the children, the adult children, than it is the particular person that needs the care, because it just puts a lot of stress on them, and I think you know that, but that's what I try to do, certainly, is to let people know the reality of it, and a lot of people just don't want to admit it, but you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I have found helpful in my client base is I have been able to use my own personal examples. and give them tips on what I have learned, on what to do, but more importantly, on what not to do. Talk with your parent as an adult, not as a child. Don't dictate you need to do this, you need to do that. Put it into the sense of, this is what's happening for me, Pops. That's what I call my dad. This is what's happening for me. And in reality, when he hears what's happening for me, he wants to still help me out because I'm still his little girl.
Right. It's
always
will be. Yeah. You talk a lot about legacy on your site and certainly in your marketing efforts. So talk to us a little bit about that and, planning for a legacy. You use a term called circles of legacy. Talk to us more about that.
The circles of legacy are, number one is, can you take care of yourself? So I call that financial independence because that's very important. Years ago, my mother said to me the best favor that she could do for her children is to be able to financially, emotionally, and physically take care of herself. So those words have stuck with me for the time frame since she hasn't been here. I keep hearing that repeated over and over again. So financial independence means, do I have enough resources to take care of myself? The interlocking circle that is adjacent to that is the family legacy. If you have capital left over at death, what do you want your children to have or other heirs? What do you want them to have? Some really high net worth folks maybe don't want their children to receive 100% of their assets. They may have the third circle in mind, which is community legacy. And what do I want to leave to community? Mm-hmm. So those are the three components that I look at with clients. And some folks may not ever get out of financial independence. And that's perfectly okay because the word wealth is well-being. And it's perfectly okay if what you're leaving behind is a powerful legacy of what's been important in your life and have that as a role model for your children and your grandchildren.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of legacy, I think of how someone would want to be remembered.
Exactly.
Right? And but you're talking about it in a little different context, or no?
I am. I tie this in with my client base, but I've also started another organization, which I'm still in process of putting up a website for, which is called Legacy Planning Across Generations. Mm-hmm. And I have had that trademarked. And what that is going to enable me to do is to work more with the nonprofit community, the senior community as a non-financial advisor, just with promoting the legacy concepts. Because your point of how do we want to be remembered is really critical. Now, and I've done a lot of self-evaluation and research on how I want to be remembered. And are my actions in alignment with how I want to be remembered? Am I portraying that to the people and the community that's most important to me?
Yeah. You talk also about a legacy letter.
Correct.
What is a legacy letter?
Okay, in its purest form, it's called an ethical will. And I've been working with an organization that's called Celebrations of Life. Mm-hmm. Where I've had the pleasure of learning from Dr. Barry Baines, who is a hospice doctor, and Tracy Ward, who is also a very instrumental part of Celebrations of Life. And they've taken me through a training on the ethical will legacy letter. And it goes back to biblical times. And it can be as simple as a poem. It can be as long as a book. And it's usually directed to a person, a child, maybe a parent, or a group of children, or possibly even to your community. It talks about, life has been a series of events for me. Some of this has been really positive. Some of it has had some bumps in the road. But this is why you're important to me. It's a place to be positive with the recipient of the letter. It's not a place to state resentments towards that person. but it is a place to just say, gee, you've been really important in my life, and here is why.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily financial related.
It's just not financial at all.
At all, right. Okay.
That's why the distinction here is that these are not financial documents. They're not legal documents. They're simply a values statement. And when I say simply, it's actually very in-depth work, and you can start and stop on it as the one doing the writing for it, because it brings up emotions, it brings up memories, it is something that can be very impactful and meaningful. It's a great gift to give to the next generation.
Yeah. What suggestions do you have to people who really haven't done this type of planning? How do you start? Where do you begin?
Well, you can begin simply if you like to write, and you don't have to be able to write also. That also tends to be a stumbling block. Well, I can't write, or I've done nothing meaningful in my life, or I've had more failures than successes. And the truth is, when people start answering some very simple questions, like who would have impact on you when you were growing up? Could be a parent, could be a teacher. How has your family relationships influenced your life? They're probing questions that are very personal, and you just start. And what I do when I put on a workshop is I start with just asking folks to write down, do you know the name of your grandparents?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the name of your great-grandparents? And some few know the name of their great-grandparents, and by the time you get to great-great-grandparents, nobody knows the name. I've not had one person know the name.
Interesting, yeah.
So it's just a process that you can go through. Like when my stepmother died, I wrote a poem about her. And that was I'm sad I didn't do it before she died, but I didn't. So I did it after she died. And it can be something simple. It doesn't have to be something where you're spending hours and hours on it. And the most important thing is it comes from your heart. It doesn't matter if the writing is not perfect.
Yeah, especially, I've got, I'm fortunate enough, I've got 4 wonderful grandchildren, but...
Congratulations.
Thank you. They're pretty young, and where I think if anything happened to me today, I'm knocking on wood that it doesn't, but so...
Yeah, we just don't know. We don't have that crystal ball.
Right,
yeah.
But, would they remember me? They might remember me, but they're not going to know a whole lot about me, and except for what my own children can remind them of or tell them about. So it is good to put those things down, not only for your own kids, but your grandkids and whether it's just
and future generations.
And future yeah, there's a lot of organizations out there actually doing this on video where they're
correct
doing videos or at least audio interviews and keeping that for the family. So it's pretty neat stuff.
There's many ways that you can do this, and what I'm personally doing, I am going to be celebrating my 60th birthday in July.
Oh, congratulations.
And what I have decided to do, I also have 3 grandchildren right now and 1 grandchild on the way. And I am a step-parent. I have no children of my own, but I claim everybody as my own. So
right.
What I'm doing is I'm putting together a book of vignettes that is going to be specific to each person that's been important in my life. Either they are still alive or they may already be deceased. But that's going to be my gift. I'm going to write a birthday gift to everybody that's been important in my life. And I intend to present it at an event that I'm putting on because I am passionate about this work. I just feel that it's so neat to be able to know, gee, Grandma did this, or my grandfather did this special project. And the stories don't get told, they get forgotten.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, that's great. I want to share with our listeners just how they could learn more about your organization, any contact information, anything that you could share. And I guess, you're based in Northern California, but we have people listening all over the country. I mean, do you provide assistance, or can you direct people to others that are doing something similar to you in those areas, or how does that work?
Yes, I have a big network, and fortunately, because we have been an established company for a long time, our client base tends to be primarily here in California, and we do have a few folks in Arizona and in Oregon, and one person in Connecticut and one person in Israel.
That's great.
So the way the laws are set up, as long as I keep things compliant, I can pretty much work with whomever I want to work with. And so, yes, I have a network of folks that if I can't work with them, I can do a referral source. Got it.
Perfect. So go ahead, share with people how they could connect with you.
Okay. The website is F as in family, W as in wealth, C as in consulting, G as in group.net. That's fwcg.net. And a phone number for myself is 408-453-2221.
Great. Well, Peggy Martin, Family Wealth Consultants, thank you so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers. It was very, very informative.
I am, again, very delighted to be here. I actually started reading your book. There's wonderful pointers in your book.
Great.
And it's great to have resources consolidated into one source. So it's quite helpful.
Great. Well, thank you. And again, thanks for joining us. We'll have to have you back. And I want to thank everybody out there for joining us as well. Just be safe out there, and we'll talk to you all soon.